guest is here.
Okay.
So let's get her on. Is she there, Danielle? Are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
How are you?
Hi, Danielle.
Good. How are you?
Good. Can I see her on there? Okay. So I actually met her last week. She kind of went on like a book tour / family vacation, and I got to meet her in Pacific. And we went to a little bar in the Seahorse something. What was it called again?
Yeah, Seahorse Brewery, I think, or Seahorse Brewing.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you. I actually have been looking forward to this because I say this all the time. There you are. Oh, look, she actually does this. She actually knits while she talks. Like, I can't even cross the street.
By the way, Danielle, is it okay to call you Danielle? My name's Leonard.
Nice it's Daniella.
Daniella. Okay, I got you.
So tell us, what exactly is the definition of a cult? So are people in our audience, because I know we throw that word around a lot because it feels like no matter what he does, his base just accepts it and says, yes, Daddy, it's all inspired by Jesus. What is the very definition of a cult?
So there really is not a lot of agreement in that. I say it's just a very complicated question. So people like build whole models to try to explain it. One of the things that I do is say, if we go to why we use the word cult, even before we're defining it, like when we say someone is in a cult, I think what we're trying to say is this person has come under coercive control, right? Like this person is no longer in control of themselves. Somebody else is in control of them. And I have this like 10-part definition of cult that I'm happy to run through. It's not that complicated, but I describe it as, okay, so a cult is a group that has a leader, a charismatic leader, but that leader can be an idea or a person, okay? Charismatic leader, it has this sacred assumption and it gives you this worldview, right? So not necessarily a religion, but a worldview. And this sacred assumption I invented, which is always, we are the ones, right? We are the only ones that know life, that know the way to accomplish this mission, right? Yeah. So my third thing is the transcendent mission, right? This mission that is like so big and so important, right? We're going to drain the swamp and rescue all of the children who are being, trafficked. And this is how they recruit people into the cult. Then they, step 4, require constant self-sacrifice. Step 5 is isolation. There's always an element of isolation that is introduced. And these days, isolation can be not just on a commune, but we've seen a lot of isolation just through, Fox News, indoctrination nonstop. Number 6, you have your own language, your own specific vernacular, right? Because now you're getting more and more internalized. Number 7, there's an us versus them mentality, right? And this is where, as I came in on you talking about the ramping up of the America's so bad, it's in danger, right? There's all these others, and there's all these others that are the problem. And this is the ultimate message of every cult leader. The world is in danger. I'm going to save you. Now do this. And do this, number 8, is the exploitation of labor. And this is, I think, really important to understand that cults are all about labor. People, I grew up in the Children of God cult, and people get so stopped at the what. That was a child sex cult. They don't get to the why. And the why was because they built an army of 10,000 singing, dancing street beggars for Jesus. And we performed and made money for them all around the world. And number 9 is having high entrance and exit costs. This gets really confused with people saying it can't be a cult because you're free to leave. And that's not what it means. It just means you've given up a lot to be in that group, and you're going to lose a lot, if not.
You're not talking about financial costs. You're talking about, it could be morality or family. It could be any number of things.
It can be financial costs, but it's usually not ever only financial costs.
Okay.
It's just, when people say you're free to leave anytime, it really means my way or the highway. And then if you leave, you're out forever. And I always say, like, no group that is free to leave anytime needs to tell you that, Yeah. I've never had someone come up to me in Costco and be like, ma'am, just so you know, you're free to leave anytime.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the final step is ends justifies the means mentality. You know, there's always, I say this is kind of like when the cult is in end game and anything goes, right? And like we have seen MAGA members say that there is nothing that Donald Trump could do that they wouldn't agree with.
Can I ask you a
and
question?
That can be true for people, including up to and when they lose their own children in service of the cult, which is where it gets very tragic.
Why do they why is it that they always use God and Jesus and religion? Like, and listen, I happen to be a person of faith, and I don't, whether you're not, I don't know, but why is it like they're talking about like grace and peace and love at church on Sunday, right? And then it's own the libs, beat police officers, sexually abuse women. How do they even justify that in their minds? Like, I can't even understand the mental gymnastics of what you have to go through to say, you know, if I do something wrong, you're going to burn in hell. You're against God's design. But it feels like if a white man does it, somehow everything's okay and he gets a free pass because you're not allowed to judge him.
Yeah, I mean, so for sure it's not always religion, right? And honestly, what I tell people is anything in the space of personal transformation, people can show up and like predators can show up, right? And so we have these days, we have exercise cults, we have yoga cults, we have, you know, businesses that are cults very often. But religion, especially like the 5 sort of patriarchal world dominating religions, every cult is giving you a worldview. And most of these cult leaders, when you really look at it, it's not any like accepted Christian worldview. It's just they've cobbled these things together. They cobble their specific cult worldview together. But religions like Christianity and Islam and some of these big patriarchal religions, like there is just already so much of that worldview built. Right. And often even like Jim Jones famously started as a Christian pastor and then turned completely into, I was never Christian. I just did this to get people into communism. And he had sort of completely replaced religion for his people with this worldview. And then he was the deity. Right. And that's kind of what they're building. And by the time, I feel like, especially by the time we got to Donald Trump's second inauguration, like he has had so much time to build this cult of personality up that they're basically going to do anything he says.
The one thing I hear a lot is, I'm worried about JD Vance. I'm worried about JD Vance. And listen, I understand that, but I kind of feel like what I've heard, what you've said is this is almost like a cult of personality. You can't just like plug and play a Jim Jones or a Donald Trump. Like, I mean, he's not charismatic. He's not likable. Am I wrong? Like, you don't just plug in a cult leader, right? It's not like a Duracell battery.
It's not like that at all, right? So first of all, you have to have a personality to lead a cult of personality, and Shady Vance is just not the one.
No, he's pretty dull.
People keep telling me, well, Peter Thiel picked him. Well, he picked wrong. You know, I don't know what to tell you. But historically, so I said a cult can be led by an idea or a person. And when it's led by a person, it's often a cult of personality. A cult of an idea, something like Scientology, I think is easier to pass down. A lot of the dogs are Republican. I'm very sorry.
Must be a cult member at the door.
They drink out of the toilet, so they're definitely Republicans. Yes.
A lot of the, I think there's been a lot of these cults of idea kind of building about since the Reagan time. Right? Like we know that the evangelicals got together and picked their issues that they were going to care about and like really consolidated. And I think maybe they thought they were bringing in Donald Trump as the patsy. But what I really believe happened is Donald Trump took all their cults and blended them into this big one. And that is exactly what David Berg of Children of God that I grew up in and wrote my book Uncultured about did. He went around, right? Cults pop up in times of social turmoil. So he was in the 60s and early 70s, just went around collecting other people's cults And you have a whole population of people that are already in that culted mindset. And now you just get them over to your mission, right? Which his mission was sort of drain the swamp and then turned into like the Epstein files.
Hi, Danielle. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
As Leonard. So it is very, very difficult to speak to cult people, no matter how many facts, no matter how many accurate news articles you have, no matter how much sense you make, common sense, intelligence. Is there any way, in your experience, is there any way to start to get through to these people? Is there any way to get them to start thinking differently, or is it pretty much impossible?
So it's really, really hard to engineer what we call a crack in the brainwashing. In my opinion, that's because we buy into our own indoctrination as adults, right? So it's kind of like, this was my experience in the army. Like growing up in the Children of God, they couldn't make me believe it no matter what they did, and they tried. But when I decided to like really buy into American propaganda and go into the military, right, I can push myself past anything, basically. And it's not till you have this moment that wakes you up. So it's hard to predict what that is. However, sometimes you have mass moments. I personally believe that the Epstein files was like that had become the mission. They kind of yanked the mission out from under their people, which is also something the Children of God accidentally did when they told their people, you know, maybe Jesus isn't coming back in our lifetime anymore. And then they haven't really backfilled that. He sort of just turned on his people, and I think maybe he's listening to everyone saying he's already a dictator. And so he forgot that he needs his cult. So I think part of the good news is that it is cracking up. And because I'm seeing so many of these cracks, once you have the crack in the brainwashing, there is something you can do, which is number one, be accepting of the person when they want to talk and ask them questions. Because you can't, you know, cracks are really good at letting the light in. You can't think your way past a crack in the brain.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Do you think that, and my buddy, I talked to my buddy the other day, and, you know, he kind of had this thing like, let it burn to the ground when he's talking about, like, you know, democracy in the country and all this. It almost feels like in this last election, they literally just voted for themselves and cheap eggs and gas. Morality, decency, kindness, empathy, none of it mattered, right? Are they going to like lose their farms and be homeless before they actually wake up, or is that just the deep state trying to take advantage of them?
I mean, unfortunately, American history indicates that we usually wait till we can measure the damage in bodies and specifically white bodies before we are kind of willing to boil over or reach our tipping point. I kind of think everyone's wondering now, right? What is the tipping point going to be? But one thing is, as the president, you know, he has kind of forced the entire nation into this cult. And I don't know if he's just not doing a good job. I don't know of any cult leader that could have survived forcing 2/3 of his population against their will. I don't know of any dictators that really could come to power with less than a 30% base of their support. So, you know, it's almost like you're supposed to boil the frogs slowly so they don't jump out, but he's broiling them. And I think we can all sort of feel that maybe there's a tipping point coming here.
One of the things that we talk about here, and I want to get your opinion, what I feel like a lot of this stems from, I hear this a lot, traditional family values, right? And not one person on the right can actually say what that is. It almost feels like when Barack Obama sat in the White House instead of picking their cotton, it's like their brains got broke and they're like, oh my gosh, there's not a white man in the White House. Is that what it is? You go from Obama, then you have you know, Vice President Harris. It seems like they want 1787 white man ruling the country. Am I off base there, or is that in line?
I think that's a lot of what it is. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in one of his really good essays, talks about, like, if Barack Obama was the first Black president of America, Donald Trump is the first white president of America, because he is the literal backlash. I also, my personal belief is that, you know, everybody was at Diddy's parties, right? Like, our government and our rich power players in Hollywood and the country and the billionaires, like they were all doing the bad stuff.
Mhm.
And they started to see that as we're moving forward as a country and trying to, like, the history wasn't going to judge them well. And so they're like, well, we gotta, I almost feel like while we were all being told by our grandmothers, don't let them pull you back there, the
Right.
sons were being told by their grandfathers, oh, it was so great to have these mommy bang maids at home doing everything for you. And now they are trying to yank us back there. I really do not think it will work, though.
The people that are still supporting him, like not just his followers, right? Because you got the MAGA concepts of a brain-based people, but then you have, like, when I look at history, like Benito Mussolini or Hitler or Stalin, they didn't come to power in a vacuum. They had people on some level that supported them. These former Republicans, MAGA, whatever you want to call them, are they scared, or do they like this? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because
what do they tap into exactly? What are they tapping into?
I mean, I feel that there's stuff with the power players. Like maybe Trump has stuff on everybody, but I think everyone's been shocked by the lack of backlash by the governmental players. I do think that, like, part of this happened because Republican leadership thought there are rules to the process, but then he showed up and basically threw out the rule book. And now,
Daniella, I have a question.
Knows what he's gonna do next.
Do you have a book out, or did you want to let the people know where to find you, or
Yeah, for sure. I have written 2 books. I have written a memoir called Uncultured about growing up in the Children of God cult and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. And you can get that anywhere you buy books. And it's also on audio. I have a second book coming out, The Culting of America. And you can find me at knittingcultlady.com, find information on that. And I'm also Knitting Cult Lady on most of the social media.
The stuff today was fascinating. It seems like we could talk for a couple of hours about it. It's truly fascinating. And it's a subject that a lot of people are interested in. They really want to know what the heck happened with people like Marco Rubio, who was saying, this is the next Hitler. And now he's the Secretary of State, and a lot of people are just fascinated with the whole cult mentality. Yeah.
And this is sort of what I've done in Culting of America is walk us through that list in detail, but then show you in the end of how, like, this is how we got here where we are in this country right now. And the religious extremists have taken the White House, and now we all get to see what is going to happen.
Which is ironic, because when I first started making videos a couple years ago on TikTok, that's what I knew when I left the Republican Party in 2016. I left within a month because I wasn't going to worship a man. That's just my faith. I'm not going to. They worshiped him like if he's God. Yeah. You don't see Jesus hamburger stands or Jesus condoms or Jesus hats or Jesus on their boats. It's Trump, 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 Trump. He is their golden calf.
He could literally tell his followers the world is flat. And he, by his own admission, he says, if I tell them something enough, they'll start to believe it.
I mean, and he said it, right? I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and they would still vote for me. And
he was right. And the weird part is he was right. How did he know?
Yep.
How did he tap into that? That's what I think is the interesting part of the cult mentality, the brainwashing.
Yeah, I mean, he grew up under some cult leaders and studied under some other ones. I believe he's been, like many successful cult leaders, emulating these leaders and dictators for a long time. And I just think, look, for the next 3.5 years, we are going to be playing kind of fascism tug of war, where he tries to be a full tyrant and America has to pull back. And I think, he thinks sending 1,700, less than 90 guardsmen per into 19 different states is a show of force. Like, I think that's a show of incredible military weakness and the potential for 19 more states' people to push back.
I think he's looking at the midterms, and I think he knows he's going to lose. And if the Democrats take the House and the Senate, they could start impeachment proceedings. And if the Senate confirms the criminal aspect, he's gone. I think he knows that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, like, he has no reason not to sort of try for full out fascist at this point. And it is on us, the people, right? Because our government is not necessarily doing it. The individual American people
Yep.
are going to have to push back. I've been part of the veteran sit-in here in DC. That there's a bunch of veterans out there patrolling the National Guard, who's
Yep.
patrolling at Union Station, and they've pushed them back. And just people doing something, right? Give money to the Democrats in Texas who are pushing back.
Yeah.
Because that's what matters. And something that's already different about his sort of march to power is people are pushing back. You know, nobody was suing Hitler for using the Gestapo, and, you know, veteran burned the flag and got arrested, and they had to release him because DC grand jury failed to indict. Same for the guy who threw the ham sandwich. They couldn't even indict the ham sandwich.
Sandwich.
We got
Ham sandwich. That's where we are.
Well,
all right, my friend.
That was terrific, Daniella. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. You're a great guest. I'm sure when Brian Shapiro's back, he may reach out to you again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Daniella.